Formula One has always delivered some of the most intense teammate rivalries in sport, especially when both drivers are fighting for a world championship. What often begins as a respectful and professional relationship inside the team can quickly shift into tension, pressure, and personal conflict as the stakes rise. In this episode of F1 Nation, Tom Clarkson is joined by Jolyon Palmer and James Hinchcliffe to explore some of the greatest teammate battles in Formula One history and understand why these partnerships so often break down under championship pressure. The episode begins with a discussion about the Miami Grand Prix, where Kimi Antonelli's performance for Mercedes stood out. Jolyon Palmer highlights how impressive the young driver looked against George Russell, suggesting that Antonelli is already showing signs of being capable of competing at the highest level much earlier than expected. The panel also touches on updates from Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull, noting that while Ferrari did not fully convert their pace into results, their overall performance still showed promise. Lewis Hamilton's comments about Ferrari's simulator not fully matching real track conditions also lead to a wider discussion about how difficult it is for teams to perfectly replicate real-world racing in simulation environments. The conversation then moves to the main focus of the episode, famous Formula One teammate rivalries. One of the most discussed examples is Lewis Hamilton versus Nico Rosberg at Mercedes. Their relationship changed significantly in 2014 when Mercedes became the dominant team, and both drivers realized they were directly competing for the World Championship. A key moment came in Monaco when Rosberg's mistake triggered yellow flags during qualifying, preventing Hamilton from improving his lap time and securing pole position. This incident marked an early turning point in their rivalry, which gradually became more intense over time. Jolyon Palmer explains that championship battles completely change teammate dynamics because every small incident starts to feel personal, especially when only one driver can win the title. He also references Bahrain 2014, where concerns about Rosberg's engine usage during battles with Hamilton further damaged trust between them. James Hinchcliffe adds that teammate rivalries only reach their most explosive level when both drivers are fighting at the front of the grid. While similar tensions exist further down the field, they rarely attract attention because the stakes are lower. When a championship is involved, however, every decision carries emotional weight and pressure increases dramatically. The panel also discusses how teams attempt to manage these situations, with Toto Wolff later admitting that Mercedes may not have handled the Hamilton-Rosberg rivalry perfectly. Jolyon Palmer suggests that teams sometimes unintentionally make things worse by trying too hard to appear completely fair to both drivers, which can still lead to accusations of favoritism. The discussion also highlights McLaren's modern pairing of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri as an example of a team trying to maintain balance between two competitive drivers. Personality is identified as another major factor in how rivalries develop, with some drivers being more emotionally controlled while others are extremely aggressive in their approach. Nico Rosberg is described as highly determined and mentally relentless, constantly pushing himself to find any possible advantage over Hamilton. James Hinchcliffe notes that Rosberg's effort to win the 2016 championship was so intense that he retired from Formula One immediately afterward due to exhaustion. The panel then revisits the 2007 McLaren rivalry between Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso, which is described as one of the most dramatic teammate battles in Formula One history. Alonso arrived as a double world champion expecting to lead the team, but rookie Hamilton immediately matched his pace from the very beginning. As the season progressed, Alonso began to feel the team was favoring Hamilton, increasing tension inside the garage. A major flashpoint occurred in Hungary when Alonso deliberately held Hamilton in the pit lane during qualifying, preventing him from completing a final flying lap. The situation became even more chaotic due to the Spygate scandal, which resulted in McLaren being heavily penalized and excluded from the Constructors' Championship. Jolyon Palmer explains that many famous teammate rivalries follow a similar pattern where an experienced champion suddenly faces a young driver who quickly rises to their level. He mentions examples such as Vettel versus Webber, Ricciardo versus Vettel, and Leclerc versus Vettel. James Hinchcliffe adds that younger drivers often perform better than expected because they race without fear, while experienced drivers carry the pressure of expectation from teams, media, and fans. Another iconic rivalry discussed is Ayrton Senna versus Alain Prost at McLaren. Tom Clarkson explains that Senna's dominance in qualifying forced Prost to rely more on strategy and psychological tactics. Their rivalry eventually became extremely personal and political, leading to their infamous collisions at Suzuka, which remain some of the most controversial moments in Formula One history. The panel also reflects on Sebastian Vettel versus Mark Webber at Red Bull, where Webber often felt disadvantaged within the team. Their rivalry intensified after several key incidents, including their clash in Turkey and the Multi-21 controversy in Malaysia, when Vettel ignored team orders to overtake Webber. Webber's frustration became clear when he sarcastically said, "Not bad for a number 2 driver," after a race win. Throughout the discussion, the panel emphasizes that teams themselves often play a major role in creating or worsening teammate rivalries. Strategy decisions, car upgrades, and communication issues can all lead to mistrust between drivers. Once that trust is broken, every action within the team is interpreted as potential favoritism, making the situation even more unstable. The conversation then returns to the present, focusing on George Russell and Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes. Jolyon Palmer believes Russell now faces increasing pressure as Antonelli continues to impress, but Antonelli's calm personality may help prevent the kind of emotional breakdown seen in past rivalries. However, if Mercedes returns to consistent championship contention, their partnership could become one of the most closely watched dynamics in modern Formula One. In conclusion, the panel agrees that teammate rivalries are one of the most fascinating elements of Formula One. While they can damage relationships and create internal tension within teams, they also produce some of the sport's most unforgettable moments. From Senna and Prost to Hamilton and Rosberg, these rivalries define entire eras of Formula One and continue to captivate fans because they combine speed, pressure, emotion, and the relentless desire to become world champion. As the discussion continues, the panel reflects on why these rivalries remain such a powerful part of Formula One storytelling. They agree that the unique structure of the sport, where teammates share identical machinery, engineers, and data, creates an environment where comparison is constant and unavoidable. Unlike other forms of racing, there is nowhere to hide inside a Formula One garage. If one driver is faster, the other immediately knows it, and so does the entire team. This constant transparency often accelerates both performance and conflict at the same time. Tom Clarkson explains that this is why teammate rivalries feel more personal than battles with other teams. Losing to a rival car can be explained through performance differences, but losing to your own teammate feels much harder to accept. Both drivers have access to the same resources, so any gap between them becomes a direct reflection of skill, mindset, or confidence. That psychological pressure is what slowly transforms competition into conflict. Jolyon Palmer adds that modern Formula One has made these dynamics even more intense because data is shared instantly and extensively between drivers. Every braking point, throttle input, and corner speed is analyzed in detail, which can be both helpful and damaging. While it improves performance, it also increases pressure, as drivers are constantly aware of exactly where they are stronger or weaker than their teammate. James Hinchcliffe points out that once a rivalry becomes emotionally charged, it often spreads beyond the track. Media interviews, radio messages, and public comments all start to carry hidden meaning. Drivers begin reading between the lines of every statement from their teammate or team principal, which can deepen mistrust even further. At that point, even small decisions during a race weekend can feel like major political moves within the team. The panel also discusses how some rivalries never fully explode, even when competition is extremely close. This usually happens when both drivers maintain strong mutual respect or when one driver clearly establishes dominance early in the partnership. In such cases, the relationship remains professional, even if tension exists behind the scenes. However, when two drivers are closely matched over multiple seasons, rivalry becomes almost inevitable. Attention then returns to the idea of generational clashes, where an experienced driver is suddenly challenged by a younger talent. The panel explains that this pattern has repeated throughout Formula One history because rising stars bring fresh energy, while established drivers carry the burden of expectation. When the younger driver quickly adapts